Well, thanks for joining me today, Brian. Quick introduction to myself. My name is Jace. I am an account executive here at Hyperbots. Been here a couple months. Spent most of my career in the software as a service space, focused on automating the financial and accounting aspects of businesses. With me today, we also have Brian Kalish, who brings over 3 decades of experience in corporate finance, financial planning and accounting, treasury, having worked with leading organizations including JP Morgan Chase. Previously served as an executive director at AFP and now advises global finance teams on best practices, technology adoption, and finance transformation strategies. So thank you for joining us here today, Brian. We appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here, Jason.
Well, cool. We'll kick things off here. The basics of this conversation today is really about Hyperbots AI copilots on Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And first question for you, Brian, what makes Hyperbots AI copilots a natural fit for Business Central today?
Sure. Well, what's interesting is, Hyperbot ships, a ready-made connector for Dynamics 365 Business Central, SaaS, and on-prem. So again, you're just starting from such a great point, right? It's already built out. So it uses BC OData version 4 and REST APIs plus AL extension of events to expose, really what we're talking about, every, finance object, whether it be chart of accounts, dimensions, vendors, items, POs, receipts, invoices, payments, and even custom-made table fields. What's great is, deployment is pure configuration. Business Central remains your single source of the truth, while the copilots run the automation behind the scenes.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. And how long does it take typically to get a copilot live on Business Central from what you've seen?
So great question. Get asked that a lot. So, really what we're talking about end to end, sandbox mapping, UAT, replay, production, cutover. We're talking, this lands in 2 to 4 weeks. We need API credentials. We need a sandbox company, about 90 minutes to map fields, extra custom tables, add maybe, like a few days to the connector core because it's already built.
Sure. It's not the huge lift that it typically would be with maybe something like an ERP where you're ripping out a tool and replacing the whole thing, maybe takes 6 to 8 months. So awesome.
Yeah. No, but I mean, in that same vein, some of these projects, and we'll leave names out of it, but, people, go down these journeys that are multi-year. They're like, we hope this is done in 3 years. We're talking about a completely different time frame here.
Yep. Couple days to a couple weeks tops, depending on what it exactly is you're rolling out. 100%.
Absolutely.
And how often does Hyperbot sync data with Business Central, and what cadence would you recommend from your experience?
Sure. So if we break it down by type, so, if we think about metadata, I'd say probably weekly makes sense. When we think about masters, so vendor items, dimensions, that's probably more like on a cadence of daily. When we think about transactions, so POs, receipt, invoices, probably hourly for logistics, but really real time for posting and accruals. And then I think what everyone's kind of focused on, how about rights? So you're talking on your PO, invoice, JE, accruals. That should really always be in real time. And real time is the cadence you can have.
Sure.
Oh, I was going to just say also the cadence is just a UI toggle. So you can throttle, if API call budgets are tight. So it's, again, nice, dynamic environment.
Yeah. And customizable at the end of the day. So depending on what cadence fits best for that process, you guys can obviously adjust that. How does each copilot automate a typical Business Central task?
That's a great question. And so it's fun. You were kind enough in the intro to say, I think you mentioned global. So I'm actually about to head off to Southeast Asia. So I'm off to Malaysia and KL, Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei, and they're asking the same question. So that's why this question is so germane. So, when you think about invoice processing, OCR plus three-way match. So you get your PO, you've got the receipt, you've got the invoice, auto dimension coding, post, the AP voucher. What's really important about that is probably about 80% of it's going to be STP. And I think that's just something key for people to understand is, when we start talking about agentic AI, people are thinking like it can do 100%. And it's like, no, what we're focused on is let the AI do what the AI is good at. And it's kind of funny, it almost sounds like the Pareto rule, right? 80 just always kind of comes up. So, 80% of the work can be done. The other 20% that the humans focused on, that's what they can spend their time on. So it's such a plus from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective. We think about accruals. So it's going to, it reads, opens POs and receipts, books month-end accruals, JEs, auto reverses when invoices land. We talk about PR and PO, builds requisitions from contracts, checks budgets, routes approvals to in teams, creates the BC PO header and lines. You think about, vendor management. So it validates, things like in W-9s and EINs, routes onboarding workflow, updates vendor card and ETF data. You get to payments. What I think is something really important is it analyzes discounts and cost of capital. I mean, that's stuff that just isn't being done today because it just takes too much time. There's too much unstructured data. It's in multiple sites. That's where, the beauty of agentic AI really, shows itself. It's going to trigger ETF batches via PC's payment journal and bank links. And then even getting to the point of doing, sales tax verification, right? Even, that's a very manually based process today for most organizations. And the fact that, the Copilot can come in here, validate, origin and destination, item tax groups, rate lookups, and then, writes clean tax lines. So again, it's just understanding all the capabilities that agentic AI can do. And in all honesty, Jace should be doing.
Yeah, 100%. And I know you'd mentioned the 80% STP being a very big thing for you guys. How does Hyperbots handle the exceptions or write failures back to Business Central for those 20% that, may need your attention?
Right. And so it's interesting. So the kind of, again, these questions that I get and discuss with people, it's kind of, it's this idea that we just turn it over. And if something goes wrong, we kind of hope that we find it. Well, that's not how it works at all, right? So basically, what happens is, every write is followed by immediate readback via OData. So if BC returns an error, say, closed period or dimension mismatch, the connector retries 3 times, and then it parks the record into what we would call an integration exceptions queue with the raw BC error and a Teams alert. So nothing silently fails.
Sure. Notifies you exactly what the issue is and what needs to be done to fix it. That's awesome. And what safeguards exist for security, data integrity, and customization that you've seen?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. So I had to take notes on this one. So it's not exactly, you're getting a little bit outside of my swim lane, but to share with people. So it's, it's TLS 1.3 plus EAS 256 encryption, SOC 2 type 2, and SOI 27001 compliance. You also have AAD OAuth and scopes, so tokens match your permission set. So I actually had to have my IT people help me a little bit on that one. It's a little bit outside, but in that same, just continuing on. So you've got you've got custom fields and dimensions. We read write any table extension or custom dimension code, multi company dashboard. So one pane tracks every BC company and environment. And then what's also really great is you've got multi-currency. So Copilot uses BC's currency tables and posting dates to ensure the correct Forex.
Sure. No, thanks for sharing that. And what happens if we upgrade Business Central or you migrate to another ERP for say?
Absolutely. So Hyperbot connections are versioned and auto-compatible with each major BC wave. So during upgrades or migrations, we enable dual write mode. So we're posting to both ledgers until that cutover occurs. Zero downtime, zero data loss.
Awesome. And how can you guys guarantee each right transaction into Business Central is successful?
So another great question, because that's again what everyone's concerned about. Like, how can you guarantee this? Well, the connector posts and then instantly rewrites the record and compares every field, the amounts, the dimensions, the currency, the posting date, and then a green posted check mark appears only after a perfect match. Any mismatch triggers retries, and then you get that exception alert.
Sure. Notifies you right away. And how does Hyperbots handle Business Central specific nuances and customizations? Because obviously we all know each ERP is a little bit different today, and would love to see what you've seen using Business Central.
So again, this is where I think, Hyperbots has done such a great job, on what I consider the back end. I mean, they just have, you know, incredible talent that they're utilizing. So, BC's flexibility, right? So AL table extensions, custom dimensions, posting groups is exposed through the connector's metadata scan. So the optional columns become first-class mapping targets. The co-pilots read them for context, write back new values. So sub-ledger batches flow through standard journals, and we respect posting group logic so the GL remains completely compliant.
Obviously, very, very important aspect to stay compliant on that side of things. How is Hyperbot's Agentic AI and Business Central different from other AI add-ons, including Microsoft's native AI features that it comes with?
So again, another great question, and is like, okay, there's a lot of things that are going on right now in agentic AI. One term that I recently learned is agent washing. I don't know if you're familiar with it or the audience is where if you think about all this is happening in a black box, and if I say it's agentic AI, it's hard to prove that it's not. Again, what is fantastic with Hyperbots is it is truly agentic AI. So where one of the areas that you can kind of tell the difference between Hyperbots and other products is that most products stop at OCR or predictive dashboards. Hyperbots adds, as I was saying, agentic workflow. This is AI that acts, it creates the POs, posts to the Gs, reverses accruals, requests credit memos, reconcile payments, closes the POs, validates the tax. This is all under one roof. So if we think about it, it's really, from my perspective, is if you take, all the benefits that we started with, RPA a couple years ago, and now you have a thinking bot that it can address all these. And so I kind of close it out with, basically these are finance trained models. And I know these numbers are going to sound pretty incredible, but they're actually true and we can prove it. We're talking about 90, let me make sure I get my number right. These models deliver 99.8% field extraction and decision accuracy. And we can show those numbers, which then translates to, not surprising, 80% productivity, gains end to end versus, as you were saying, kind of what's going on with the other tools, maybe 30% lift that we saw from point OCR or RPA products. Plus, you get immediate audit trail access across AP, accruals, procurement, vendor onboarding, payments, and tax. So we are really talking about what I consider living through the industrial revolution in real time. In my career, as I point at my little bald head, this is what's really changed in my career from where I came out of undergrad to where we are today, is we now have technology that can truly give us that 80% benefit of what should be automated can be automated.
Sure. No, I appreciate you sharing that, Brian. And it seems like a common theme these days that we run into as well as looking to consolidate all your systems into one and not having, dozens of logins for dozens of different dashboards. And I think that kind of follows in hand with Hyperbot's vision and mission of not being, specific part of the process automator, but, your go-to finance and accounting tool for all automation. So Thank you so much, Brian, for your time today and answering all those different questions that we had for you. We appreciate your time as always, and we'll look forward to chatting again with you here soon.
Great. Be well. Take care.